God gave a promise to Abraham that he would make Abraham the father of many nations, that he would bless Abraham, and that all the nations would be blessed through him. And God said that this promise would go through Abraham's son Isaac. But before Abraham and Sarah had Isaac, Abraham became impatient and ended up having a son with their handmaiden Hagar, and that son was named Ishmael. And God gave a promise to Ishmael as well. In Genesis 17:20 it says, "And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and will greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation." Today, a major world religion claims descendancy from Ishmael and views themselves to be the fulfillment of this prophecy and the true fulfillment of the prophecy that we see in the Bible going to Isaac. And this major world religion is Islam. Islam is a religion founded by a man named Muhammad who claims that he is a direct descendant of Ishmael, although not all of the Arab peoples that are Muslim today would claim to be from Ishmael. And Muhammad began Islam in the early 7th century A.D. That is 700 years after Christ, making Islam the newest of the major world religions. The word Islam means simply submission to God. An adherent to Islam is named a Muslim. Muslim comes from the same Arabic root as Islam, and it is an active participle of the word and means one who submits to God. Islam is about a self-proclaimed prophet, the book he wrote, and the people who follow his teachings. It's about a self-proclaimed prophet, the book he wrote, and the people who follow his teachings. First of all, it is about a self-proclaimed prophet. According to Islam, a man named Muhammad was born in 570 A.D. He was considered the last and the greatest of the prophets of God. He lived in the region known as the Levant in the western Arabian Peninsula. From age 40 until his death at age 62, he claimed to receive revelations from his God, Allah, which he recorded, which we have contained today in the book known as the Quran, and we have an English copy of the Quran here. He began preaching in Mecca, which he intended to be the center of Islam. He began preaching in Mecca, where he met with initial opposition and persecution. He and his small group of followers relocated to Medina in 622. From there, he battled for control of Mecca for 7 years. He finally overcame Mecca in 629 and subsequently conquered and united the other Arab tribes under his new religion. He died in the year 632. Muhammad's life was less than virtuous, and there's a lot of information about Muhammad that does not paint him in the best light. For instance, we know that Muhammad was polygamous, that he had many wives, and that some of them were quite young. One of them in particular was only 7 years old when he married her and consummated the marriage when she was only 10. Now, Muslims do not contest that this happened. Their defense is that was the culture of the day. Whether it's the culture of the day or not, it still makes Muhammad a pedophile. And when you think about him as an authoritarian figure, isn't it interesting? Just a few weeks ago, as we studied Mormonism, how these leaders of these new religions, these self-proclaimed prophets, take that opportunity to excuse immorality for themselves while expecting strict adherence to the law among others. And that they take upon themselves more and more of the pleasures of life. Compare that, contrast that with the life of Jesus, who always gave of himself, and gave of himself even to the point of death on the cross. Think about the Apostle Paul, who also continued to give and to give of himself, and to give of himself even to death. Peter as well. And this is just not what we see when we look at these self-proclaimed prophets. Also, very early on, when Muhammad lived in Medina and was trying to capture Mecca, ended up slaughtering over 900 Jews simply because they would not convert to Islam. And this is the kind of thing that we see over and over again in the life of Muhammad. Now, it is about the self-proclaimed prophet, but it is also about the book that he wrote, the Quran. The Quran claims itself to be the most perfect or the most eloquent book. In fact, Muhammad put the Quran forward as the singular miraculous proof of his claim to be a prophet. He says, you can believe that I am a prophet because this book that I have written is so beautiful, the most beautiful book ever written. But those who are familiar with the original text, or as close as we can get to the original text of the Quran, would differ with that. Iranian Shiite scholar Ali Dashti said, the Quran, in its original version, contains sentences which are incomplete and not fully intelligible without the Arab commentaries, foreign words, unfamiliar Arabic words, and words used with other than the normal meaning, adjectives and verbs inflected without observance of the concord of gender and number, illogical and ungrammatically applied pronouns which sometimes have no referent, and predicates which in rhymed passages are often remote from the subjects. So if we are going to base our acceptance of Muhammad on the book that he wrote, and on the beauty of the book that he wrote, then he fails on that count. Now, according to Islam, there are what they call 5 pillars of the faith. These are 5 obligations for every Muslim. These come from the Quran and also from what are called the Hadith. These are the sayings and the sayings of Muhammad and stories about Muhammad that have been recorded over the years and have been put together into several volumes. And from these we get the 5 pillars. Number 1 is the testimony, the Shahadah. This is a statement of faith of Islam. And this is key to Islam. It is that there is no other God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. So this statement is the entry point into Islam. If you say that and you mean it, then you can call yourself a Muslim. It is also used in prayer. Prayer is the second pillar of Islam. Salah, they call it. Muslims pray 5 times a day facing Mecca. The third pillar of Islam is almsgiving, zakat, which is like our tithe. It is a fixed portion of one's income that is given to the poor and the needy, although it can change over time, so it's not right to say it's a flat 10%. But then there's also the sadaqah, which is an additional voluntary giving over and above the zakat. The fourth pillar of Islam is fasting, Psalm, where they go without food or drink between dawn and dusk during the holy month of Ramadan. This is semi-obligatory with a lot of exceptions. The fifth pillar of Islam is pilgrimage. They call it Hajj, and that is those who can afford it must go to Mecca at least once in their lifetime. And that is on the Arabian Peninsula. And that is where Islam began. And so that is the fifth pillar of Islam. Now there is a sixth pillar, and this is one some Muslims consider to be a pillar, others don't, but everyone agrees that this is a part of Muslim life, and that is jihad. And the word jihad means struggle. There is what they call the greater jihad and the lesser jihad. The greater jihad refers to the internal struggle, the war within yourself to submit to yourself to Allah. The lesser jihad is what we often think of as jihad, that is holy war. And there are lots of scriptures in their Quran that support the concept of holy war. For instance, slay them wherever you find them and drive them out of the places whence they drove you out, for persecution is worse than slaughter. Another passage, fight against them until idolatry is no more and Allah's religion reigns supreme. Another one, fighting is obligatory for you much as you dislike it. And then there are in lots of these other passages it talks about the infidels, referring to us as infidels because we are not Muslim, and therefore the holy war, the jihad, is against us. Then along with the 5 or 6 pillars of faith, there are articles of faith. The first article of faith is God. They believe in God, and they name Him Allah. Now, I refer to the Muslim God as Allah instead of as God, because they are not one and the same. Somebody might argue, well, they both claim to be the God of Abraham, and that may be true. There may be 1 or 2 points of consistency between the God of Islam and the Judeo-Christian God, but there are hundreds of points of divergence, so that whatever the Muslims believe in, that is not the one true God of the Bible. They also believe in angels. That is the second article of faith. They believe that God communicated the Quran to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel. So without angels, you don't have the Quran. Without the Quran, you don't have Islam. So angels are integral. They're inherent to Islam. Third, revelations. The holy books of Islam all come by divine revelation from Allah, according to the Muslims. Now they include here not only the Quran, but also the Torah of the Old Testament and what they call the Injil, which is the message of Jesus. They believe that Jesus was a prophet and that he had a new message to give, and they call that message the Injil. Now some people say that Injil is just their word for gospel. But they believe that what we view as the message of Jesus, that it has been corrupted over the years. We do not have the correct view of what Jesus taught or what he did, and so their Injil is better. But they believe that that came to them by revelation from God as well. Fourthly, they believe in prophets. Islam lists about, depending on who you ask, 25 prophets. They serve as the voice of Allah to receive and share divine insights. Almost all of them come from our Bible, even after the period of Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael. They include figures like Adam, Noah, Abraham, Elijah, Elisha, David even. Some, though, are questionable as prophets, like Lot, or Ishmael, or Jethro. But most of them do come from our Bible. They also, the fifth article of faith, the fifth and sixth, is resurrection and judgment. They believe that immorality can send a person to Jahannam, which is kind of like our word Gehenna, that is their word for hell. And they believe that good deeds will be rewarded in Jannah, which is paradise. Now let's compare some Muslim doctrines with the Bible. First of all, when it comes to Jesus, they believe that Jesus was a messenger from God, that he was born of a virgin, that he brought a new message to the Jewish people, which they refer to as the Injil, that he was not crucified or resurrected, that he was simply raised up to heaven by God. They do not believe that he atoned for the sins of mankind. Some Muslims believe that Jesus will return on the day of judgment to defeat the Antichrist. They do not believe that Jesus is God or the Son of God. And they believe him to be simply a prophet, but that Muhammad is the last and greatest prophet, even greater than Jesus. Now we disagree with this on many levels.